Making a sequel to something that is deeply beloved and critically acclaimed is a tricky thing to do. It is often stated by a lot of people that sequels, specifically movie sequels, aren't as good as the originals, and oh boy, is that definitely the case with Joker Folie, Deux, the sequel to 2019's Joker starring Joaquin Phoenix as Arthur Fleck, aka the Joker. Upon its release in October 2024, the movie was universally panned for a variety of reasons and is seen as a very divisive film. I admit that I too was a bit disappointed when I viewed this movie for the first time, but I didn't think it was a 1 out of 10 piece of shit like a lot of people did, and with another viewing of the movie and more analysing of it, I actually appreciate and understand what it was going for, what this movie was trying to say, and I think it's actually a good movie. Yeah, I'll admit, it's a good movie, but admittedly, it does have its drawbacks. This is Rycab Productions, the artist, animator, DC and Batman fan, and Sigma male, and I'm here to pick apart Joker Folie Deux and explain why it isn't dog poo. So some backstory is required before I get into Folie Deux. In 2019, Todd Phillips directed and wrote a movie called Joker, starring Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker, except this Joker was quite different from his usual portrayals. He was a mentally ill, malnourished, abused and neglected man with pathological laughter who becomes the Joker after getting kicked around and betrayed by everyone. It was a dark, disturbing, depressing masterpiece of a film that shook the cinema world, becoming iconic and spawning God knows how many memes.
A man has fallen into the river in Lego City.
He's dead. Yeah, that's not funny.
Hey!
And it definitely stood out from all the other comic book / superhero movies releasing at the time, which were all kinda still samey, family friendly CGI fests. It became the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time and the first R-rated movie to make just over $1 billion at the box office, but Deadpool and Wolverine overtook this in 2024. Ironically enough, Joker's sequel, which I'll be talking about today, was released in the same year. Now, my hype for Folie Deux, which is French for Madness of Two, was unparalleled. It was probably the most excited I've been for a movie in a very long time, even with all the rumours and eventual confirmation that it was going to be a musical.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Now that's something I bet nobody expected and was probably the biggest reason as to why this movie flopped, and well, I'll talk about the musical aspects later. The movie actually starts off very strong. It opens with a really cool animated sequence which sets up and symbolises the theming of the movie and recreates the iconic talk show scene from the first one. Like, it's awesome. It's got this rubber hose, like, Looney Tunes 1930s style of animation, and it genuinely surprised me at first. I was like, whoa, this is pretty awesome. Albeit kind of filler, but hey, at least it's cool filler, unlike some other filler that I'll touch upon later. You just know that I love animation. After this, we see Arthur is in Arkham Asylum and is currently on trial for the crimes he committed in the first film, and the courts are trying to get the death sentence for him, but his lawyers are trying to build an insanity defense, as they're trying to build a case that Arthur and the Joker are two separate personalities trapped in the same body. And the film is like this bizarre court drama and musical hybrid, which is definitely a strange angle for a comic book movie to go down, I'll tell you that. The film has an excellent tone that matches with the vibe of the first one. It still has that depressing, nihilistic and grungy atmosphere, and they definitely convey Arkham Asylum being a rundown, gritty hellhole very well. Within the first 10 minutes of the film, you see the prison is all dirty and desaturated, and the prison guards are abusive assholes who mistreat and bully the inmates constantly, not just Arthur. Joaquin Phoenix is once again amazing as Arthur Fleck / the Joker, having to once again lose a lot of weight for this role, and his chemistry with the other characters including Harley Quinn, played by Lady Gaga, but I'll talk more about her later. In fact, Arthur spends the first 10 minutes or so of this film without saying anything, without saying a single word, which is interesting. Being locked up in here must have taken a toll on him. So he's on trial for the murders he committed in the first film, and that dominoed into many people all across Gotham dressing up as clowns and idolizing him as some sort of figure, which leads to the whole narrative of the movie, which is obviously celebrity worship and how famous criminals are idolized and can develop fan bases and are exploited by the media. The movie also touches on Arthur's battle with his alter ego of the Joker. Honestly, this movie's plot is kind of hard to talk about as there isn't really one. It's just like the first film where it's a character study without much action, and the only intrigue into the plot to see where it's going is whether Arthur Fleck will be found guilty or not. In fact, I think Arthur might be in an even more hopeless and depressing situation than the first movie, as the only options he has are either the death penalty or probable life in this horrible institution. And I didn't even think that was even possible to pull off given how fucked up the first movie was. But he does get in high spirits when one of the guards puts him in a singing class, where he meets Harleen Quinzel, played by Lady Gaga. Or Lee, as people call her in this, and the approach Todd Phillips takes with her is very interesting. She plays this obsessive, crazy stalker fangirl pretty accurately, and the role reversal was rather unexpected where, in this story, Harley manipulates the Joker when it's usually the other way around in most continuities. How in this, she's just a lady from a rich upbringing who has a degree in psychology, and she just became obsessed with him and became infatuated with him when she saw him kill Murray Franklin live, and then she has to fabricate a backstory similar to his to get him to like her more. She's just a true crime fangirl who wants to meet her killer crush. This does happen in real life where serial killers and mass shooters develop fan bases that write them love letters where they say stuff like, "Oh, he's just misunderstood. He's so dreamy. I want his babies." And there was even one serial killer called Richard Ramirez who even married a woman who wrote love letters to him whilst in prison. He had that killer Riz. So Harley starts a fire which makes their part of the prison evacuate, and then Harley and Arthur kind of have this failed attempt at breaking out of Arkham Asylum, and then they have this bonding moment in their cell later, and this turns into a full-on sex scene, and oh boy, this sex scene is it's really something, not gonna lie. But I have no clue why they just let Harley go home and release her after this. I mean, she literally started a fire and attempted to break out of Arkham Asylum with Arthur. That's like the opposite of good behaviour. The next hour of the film is the courtroom sequences, where Arthur's lawyer tells him that Harley lied about her backstory, and we find out that Arthur was treated a lot more horribly in life than we thought. They go way more into detail with it than they did in the first film. How his laughing condition that he developed as a result of childhood abuse was off-putting to everyone around him, and how much of a dumbass he was, really makes you pity him more. It's also at this point that I have to say that I despise my bladder, because this movie got me so hyped and I had to take a piss about halfway through it, which I definitely didn't want to miss any part of, so yeah, I cursed my bladder for that. I think that was probably the quickest I've ever run in my whole life. I could be chased by a crazed tiger or a giant boulder and still run slower than I did that day. God, I wish I had to go to the toilet multiple times when I watched Aquaman 2 in cinemas because that movie was genuinely awful. Arthur eventually fires his lawyer because Harley Quinn basically egged him on to do so, and he represents himself as the Joker. He then has to confront Gary the Dwarf from the first film, who was a genuinely nice person to Arthur and treated him with respect. It was like a mutual respect they had for each other. How Gary ended up receiving a lot of trauma because he literally saw one of his colleagues get stabbed to death right in front of him. And you can see the conflict in Joaquin Phoenix's performance here. It's a genuinely compelling and interestingly written scene. By the way, I don't think that this movie is boring. I was kind of invested throughout all of it, or most of it. Arthur then calls out the abusive behaviour of the guards on public TV, which leads to the guards beating him up and, they RAPE him.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Yep, that's right, they full on violate him. It's not explicitly shown and it did fly over my head at first, but that wasn't really necessary in my opinion. And then they strangle Arthur's friend Ricky to death because they're just horrible and they thought that he was annoying. I guess it just shows just how awful and inhumane these guards are. Like, I was yearning for them to get some punishment for their actions, but that sadly doesn't happen. Then we reach the most controversial scene in the film, the part where Arthur publicly rejects and denounces his Joker persona. It's acted excellently, but at first I wasn't too sure what the reason or reasons for him doing this were. Like, it was kind of awkward for me at first. I think the plot does kind of go downhill from here, as this rejection of his Joker side and his Joker persona leads to his fan base hating him, Harley breaking up with him, and his own death at the end. But I think I see where Todd Phillips was going with this. It's this whole commentary on how the media glorifies serial killers and celebrities, and how they can grow fan bases who develop parasocial relationships with them. It shows that everyone, including Harley, only cared for the Joker and not Arthur Fleck. The Arthur Fleck who line is a pretty heartbreaking line spoken in the movie.
Fleck. Arthur Fleck who?
As who was Arthur in the first film before he killed all those people in clown makeup? A nobody. A socially awkward loner who was kicked around his whole life, until he skyrocketed to infamy when he headshot Murray Franklin on live TV and started riots across Gotham. It's like how a lot of fan bases for celebrities treat them like gods, as someone to look up to, as someone who isn't even human, who isn't actually them. How everyone sees Mr. Beast as Mr. Beast, and not Jimmy Donaldson. How everyone sees PewDiePie as PewDiePie, and not Felix Kjellberg. And ironically enough, with this movie's case, everyone sees Lady Gaga as Lady Gaga, and not Stephanie Germanotta. If the first film was about how society can affect and change one person, this film is about how one person can affect and change society. In fact, I think this movie's theming aged spectacularly well, as 2 months after this film released, the Luigi Mangione case occurred, when in New York City, a guy named Luigi Mangione kills the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson, this James Corden looking dude, because he was financially screwed over by his company and he was sick and tired of them scamming people's healthcare. Or he disrespected Princess Daisy, either of the two.
You disrespected Daisy, you rich bastard! Time to get a bullet through your skull!
This then led to him getting praised for what he did, and led to him garnering his own admirers online, who sent him money and love letters and begged for his release, claiming that he did nothing wrong because they actually identified with his cause. Exactly like what happens to Arthur in these two films. What Arthur does in this scene is something similar to if, let's just say, this Luigi guy all of a sudden just stood up in court, flipped off the cameras and shouted, "Screw you all, I don't care about your healthcare issues, I just did this for the clout, go fuck yourselves and suck my foot-long dong." I imagine his supporters would be pretty disappointed and betrayed too, and probably despise his guts. Just like what happens in this movie. When Arthur reaches a guilty verdict for all of his crimes, some Joker supporters blow up the courthouse, scar half of Harvey Dent's face, by the way, Two-Face is in this movie, contesting against Arthur, just randomly shoehorning his backstory in here. Then the supporters try and lead Arthur to safety in the car, but Arthur wants nothing to do with this Joker shit anymore and jumps out of their car. Him running away from this Joker cosplayer right here is symbolic of him running away from his Joker persona. He goes to the iconic stairs from the first film and sees Harley, who just breaks up with him, and it's genuinely upsetting to see, as he loved Harley and throughout his whole life she was the only one who loved him, but she only loved and admired the Joker, not Arthur. When researching this film, people actually noticed that she never called him Arthur throughout the whole movie, only Joker, and this one scene on the stairs is the only time she actually called him Arthur, and how she always pushed him to wear the clown makeup whenever he was in her presence, so she's got a clown fetish. In fact, that shot earlier on in the film where she draws a smile on the glass on the lipstick and then it goes out of focus to paint a smile on Arthur's face was like, oh, absolute cinema. We then get to the final scene of the film where Arthur just gets taken back to Arkham Asylum, gets enticed into the hallway by a guard, and then just gets stabbed to death by some random inmate who we've only seen glimpses of previously. I'll admit it's a pretty shitty but effective and memorable ending. Arthur's death isn't built up, he just gets shanked right there and then. And after he gets stabbed and is bleeding to death on the floor, the inmate who stabbed him starts carving his Joker smile into his face, implying this dude will fight Batman in the future. I kind of saw something like this coming, as one criticism from the first film was that Arthur was about 30 years older than Bruce Wayne. If they wanted to kill off Arthur for this reason, then that's fine, but they should have done it in a better way that actually had build-up. It's like in Bayonetta 3, you know, if they wanted to kill off Bayonetta, that's fine, but at least do it better than that. And also, it's ironic that I say that because Lady Gaga herself is actually a huge Bayonetta fan, so she's pretty cool for that. So they're pulling a Gotham where in that show there were two characters who were the Joker, and the Joker identity was passed on to the next one. The face carving flew way over my head at first, and I only knew about it when I looked up people saying that it happened online. I did not notice it whatsoever. Like, how do you even see him carving the smile? It's so out of focus and blurred in the background, and well, I kind of couldn't see because I had my head in my hands crying my eyes out in the cinema. Yeah, Arthur's death got me bawling, not gonna lie. Like, he is truly one of the saddest, most tragic characters in all of fiction. Like how he never caught a break or had anything good happen to him, or had anyone really love him for who he was. Like, at least Guts from Berserk can defend himself. God damn, it felt so personal as well, as I could find myself identifying and relating to Arthur Fleck quite a lot throughout these two movies. But let's be honest, if the inmate in the hallway nor the death penalty execution was gonna kill him, the lung cancer he would have gotten from all those fucking cigarettes he smokes probably couldn't have, like, god damn, man. Now, let's get on to the negatives in this movie, and we have to address the circus elephant in the room. The musical elements are unnecessary and are complete dog shit. No. Clown shit. Yep, it's time to talk about the musical elements. They aren't great. I honestly don't think this movie should have been a musical. I actually wasn't against the idea at first because of its experimental nature and thought it could have worked, but sadly didn't. I'm kind of alright with the parts where the characters are like singing but they're still in real life in the plot, but the full-on musical numbers are horrendously implemented. They just completely break the pace of the movie and the plot, and I get that they're to show what's going on in Arthur's mind during those points in the movie, like how he falls in love with Harley and has all these deliberate thoughts about them marrying and everything, or how he's being mocked in court, so fantasizing about beating everyone up in the courtroom. But they just feel like dumb filler and not cool filler like the animated intro earlier. Although they were visually striking, it just felt as if Todd Phillips was flexing the fact that he got Lady Gaga on board because she's this famous pop star that white girls who think they're quirky go crazy for, and well, that didn't really help with this movie's box office failure. The film is also stuck to the brim with these weird slow motion walking sequences and other weird shit like that, and sometimes I just wanted them to get on with it, like get on to the next relevant scenes, not with all this weird filler stuffed in. There's also this really strange scene where Harley Quinn is putting on her makeup in the mirror and she's also singing at the same time, and for whatever reason, Todd Phillips just decided to put this minute or minute and a half long scene into the movie even though it adds literally nothing. It's literally just a minute of Harley Quinn putting her makeup on and singing. Like, this is literal filler. Like, what's the point of this scene? The whole plotline of Harley Quinn being pregnant goes literally nowhere and is a completely pointless thing to add to the movie.
I'm pregnant.
What?
Like, you don't see her have the baby or anything, and it's barely even mentioned afterwards. Like, why? Why would you even add that? You can literally just take out the pregnancy thing and it wouldn't change the movie whatsoever. Joker Folie Deux is a bizarre and unique movie, to say the least. A lot of people, myself included, thought that this movie would show, like, you know, the typical thing of the Joker manipulating Harley, and then they orchestrate a massive prison break and would amass their following occultists to cause chaos across Gotham, but instead, Todd Phillips subverts that and gives us a completely different story, which is probably why it didn't sit well with many. Another reason as to why it's so panned is because it's a musical, and while I didn't think the musical parts were downright horrific, this movie really should not have been one. And maybe the last reason is just superhero fatigue, as comic book / superhero movies in general aren't doing very well at the moment. It's kind of a dying cinema trend. But this one definitely stands out amongst all the generic superhero slop that's been plaguing cinemas for like the past decade and a half. It's dark, gritty, bleak, unforgiving and unique, and even more depressing than the first film, and hell, me, my mum and my brother were all having a huge discussion about it in the car ride home, like talking about different parts of the movie, like our own theories and everything, which is honestly something most movies wish they could do with us. It's certainly more interesting and more well thought out than Aquaman 2 or the Borderlands movie, like those were disgustingly bad, boring, unoriginal movies, and hell, I can honestly name a dozen superhero movies that are worse than this one. It left my mum and me teary-eyed. It made me feel emotions unlike Aquaman 2, where the only emotion I felt was excitement. And not excitement over the film, but excitement over what I was going to do when I got home after the movie, because it was so shit. Joker Folie Deux is sublimely acted, and the cinematography is phenomenal. It's just the strange writing and the musical numbers that really drag it down. I originally gave this movie like a 5.5 out of 10, but now after rewatching this and writing the script, I'll probably bump it up to like a 6.5 or like a 7 or something like that. Yeah, sorry that this wasn't my usual kind of silly, jokey kind of review that I usually make, or like compared to the other reviews I've done, and that it veered into more video essay territory at times. Well, I guess I shouldn't apologise for that, because like, I've always wanted to make a video essay styled kind of video, and this is kind of the closest I've gotten so far. But honestly, check out the movie if you loved the style of the first one, and you might appreciate it like me. And also check out my channel by subscribing and following on my other pages. This has been Rycab Productions, and I've gotta go and live in a society now. Peace! Also, the DVD literally lies to you on the back. Look at this. Failed comedian Arthur Fleck meets the love of his life Lee Quinzel while in Arkham State Hospital. Upon their release, the pair embark on a doomed romantic adventure. They don't even get released together. There is no doomed romantic adventure. The only thing that happens when Arthur gets out is that Lee just dumps him on the stairs. Like, this DVD lies to you. The back of it lies to you.